of Adjustment. My name is Kevin Baum. I'm the chair. With me tonight as alternate Chris Merrill, Esther Olson-Murphy, Vice Chair Bob Pryor, the cheat sheet, I have my own, Rick Nealbar, and Ann Sermon. For anyone here who is here tonight for the continued hearing for Roger Elkis, which is 181 High Street, that application has been withdrawn. So, doesn't look like anyone's in attendance, so we can move on to our.
Maybe somebody.
I'm sorry.
Somebody's leaving.
Ed's been withdrawn. Okay. Have a good night.
Have a nice.
Do you mean forever?
Yeah,
Until they file it, they withdrew it, so
it's withdrawn.
Application.
Would have to be a new application.
Okay. So our first application for this evening is the application of Lisa Butler for a special exception per Article 5, Section 5.2, and Article 6, Section 6.18, the cemetery regulation to permit the proposed construction of a garage and enclosure of an existing deck within the required statutory 25-foot setback from the abutting cemetery. This property is located at 37 Linden Street in the R2 single-family residential zoning district. It's tax map parcel 8219. First order of business for us, since we're missing some full members, is to place the alternates. Yep.
I am going to exempt myself because I'm on the cemetery board, and I exempted myself from that, and I'm going to exempt myself from this application. So.
Okay, so we'll have Ann Sermon, you'll be voting on this application.
Yeah, I exempted myself from the cemetery, and I'm on the board there, so I exempted myself, and I'll exempt myself here, so there's no.
Okay, if you're gonna step off of this because of that, why don't we just have you step down from the.
Over there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just so it's clear you're not participating.
Okay, that's fine.
You don't have to leave though. We'll bring you back up later, just after this
Maybe I'll
application.
go sit out and do that.
Actually, you can participate as a non-member.
I think I'd rather be over here.
Is Ms. Butler here tonight or a representative?
Hello. I've been asked to say a few words. Is that?
Yeah, so we did receive your application. If you could, I believe everyone here has read it, but if you'd say a few words just to give us an overview of your proposal. I understand you've been through a couple boards now, so
Yeah.
it doesn't need to be in depth, but just a quick overview of what you're proposing and what you've done so far in terms of the town boards would be great.
Sure. Well, thank you for hearing my request tonight. I'm here, as you've already indicated in your overview, to request a special exception to a special case cemetery setback on Linden Street, 37 Linden Street. It's a residential lot, single-family home. This is the third stop in my special exception process. I have gone before the cemetery trustee board. They have approved my request. I've gone before the Board of Selectmen. They approved the request and passed it on to you. So this is the third, I assume, final stop here. I recently purchased this cape on Linden Street. Anybody who's lived in town probably recognizes it. It's a red one across the street from the old high school abutting the cemetery. In order to renovate it and make it accessible for my partner who's wheelchair bound. I learned that the setbacks next to a cemetery are unusual. Normally, the lot would be a 10-foot setback on the side, but because of the cemetery abutting, it's a 25-foot setback, which goes into essentially the center of the lot. It's not a big lot. So the zoning ordinance that Kevin referred to earlier provides for a special exception to enable, quote, use and enjoyment of the property. And in our case, use and enjoyment would mean enclosing an existing deck that is within that setback and adding a garage also there. These are going back toward the back of the property from the street. And our changes would definitely stay within the traditional 10-foot setback, as I think you can see on the attached drawings. So we are respectfully requesting the zoning board grant our special exception request.
Thank you. Just so I fully understand, I have the plan here. I know, I am familiar with the house, and I'm happy to meet the person who lives there. I see that house, I walk by all the time, and it's a very cool house. There's an existing open side porch, and that's going to be enclosed?
Enclosed,
That-
yeah.
And that's the one you can see to the left from the street?
Yes, if you're facing from the street, that's on the left side, yep.
Okay, and then it looks like to the rear of the existing building, there'll be a 3-season porch and then a 2-bay garage?
Right, the house is an antique cape, and there's an L off the back, a narrow L, and behind the L is an existing deck. I just purchased this home in September, so I'm a new owner, and the deck did exist there already. So we're proposing to enclose that as a 3-season porch, and then add this 2-car garage beyond it.
Okay, so you're basically enclosing the two porches or decks that are there, or am I?
Right,
Okay,
yeah, that's,
and other than that, there's no change to the rest of the structure?
there is a shed on the left side as you look at the property from the street that's right hard by the cemetery fence. And we were going to move that. Now it sounds like we'll probably need to tear it down because it's rotten, and the builder's afraid it's going to fall in on the house if we try to move it.
Oh, I see, so there's a fairly significant shed there.
Yeah, yeah, it's good
Okay.
size.
And will that be replaced in kind or just removed?
Not there, that will be taken out.
Okay. Any other,
If anything else, from the perspective of the cemetery, there'll be less
Right,
intrusion because of that large structure will be gone.
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
any questions, other questions? Okay. Anything else you'd like to add before we finish?
I don't think so. I think
Okay.
you've got everything.
Well, thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Would any members of the public like to speak for, to, against this application? Okay, hearing none. I'm going to close the public hearing and go into deliberation.
Mr. Chairman, I think, given the approvals that already exist on this property and the completely non-intrusive nature of the proposal, I see no need to go through the special exception criteria, and would be happy to make a motion if you would accept one at this time.
I agree and find to rely on the written submission.
Yeah. I would make a motion then to approve the application of Lisa Butler for a special exception for the parcel, for the property at 37 Linden Street as submitted.
So moved.
Motion and, oh,
Oh,
Second?
Second.
okay. Any discussion? Yeah, I mean, just briefly, I think it makes sense. It clearly meets the criteria. It's an improvement over the existing with the removal of that shed. I know that area, and it is certainly, it's in line with, I know the property behind it, which abuts right up against the cemetery. And, is certainly, certainly reasonable and is not going to detract from any property values or, cause any, interference with streets or traffic or impact to health, safety, or welfare, so.
My ancestors are the nearest neighbors, and they're fine with it.
Are they? So you may have Bob outside of your house.
But that's about it.
Not so bad. Anyway,
A horrible thought. Don't scare the woman.
no, you know what I mean. Now we're.
I don't know. I
We
think
usually take longer to get off track.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna move it on and try to extract myself.
too late.
All right, so, we have a motion, we have a second, and a discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Chair says aye, so unanimously approved. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Do you have a plaque?
I'm right next door to his parents, so.
Oh, yeah?
The Merrill lot.
I've learned I gotta keep my mouth shut.
You are, aren't you?
Yeah, the Merrill lot's right down the other side of you. Of course, I won't be there.
Second application of the night is the application of Phillips Exeter Academy for a variance from Article 4, Section 4.3, Schedule 2, Density and Dimensional Regulations, residential, to permit the proposed construction of a residential structure, two-family dwelling, approximately 10 feet from the front lot line where 25-foot front yard setback is required, and a special exception pursuant to Article 4, Section 4.2, Schedule 1, permitted uses, and Article 5.2 to permit the proposed construction of three two-family dwellings within the R2 single-family residential zoning district. These properties are located at 35 High Street, 10 Gilman Lane, and 8 Gilman Lane in both the C1 central area, commercial, and the R2 single-family residential zoning districts.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I will let Annie vote on this so that we don't have any,
Okay. Thank you, Chris.
I can still participate.
You can participate. So you had said you were stepping down, so I wanted to make sure that was clear. But
Yeah,
yes,
no,
please, you can and please do.
Okay.
And so Ann Sermon will be voting on this application. The applicant would like to
Great.
present.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, board members. My name is Roy Tilsley. I'm an attorney with Bernstein Shore in Manchester, here tonight on behalf of Phillips Exeter Academy concerning the properties at 35 High Street and 8 and 10 Gilman Lane. I'm joined by our engineer, Corey Belden, Mark Layton from the Academy, who's got control of the slide deck, the most important part of this, as well as from Market Street Architects, Robert Harbison and Christina O'Brien, if you have questions about design. We are seeking one variance and one special exception as part of a proposed faculty neighborhood and lot line adjustment, which will eventually go to the planning board. Essentially, we're creating a 4-acre lot from tax map 71 lots 117, 118, and a portion of 119. As currently proposed, that lot contains 8 housing units. We're seeking to create a faculty housing redevelopment to add 5 units to that for a total of 13 units. The proposed lot is partially in the C1 district and partially in the R2 district. Essentially, I think I have this right, the map 71 lot 117 portion is in C1, the rest is in R2. This project is subject to HDC review, and Corey will fill you in a bit on that. It's also subject to planning board approval for a lot line adjustment and the proposed site plan. We're here tonight for the one variance and one special exception. The variance is variance from section 4.3 to allow a structure, in this case, a two-family dwelling located within 10 feet from the front lot line in the R2 zone, where a 25-foot setback is required under your ordinance in the R2 district. This particular proposed duplex is basically right next to the existing duplex at 35 High Street, which is on the C1 side, which has a 10-foot setback. And in fact, this one, 35 High Street, has a 10-foot setback. So essentially what we're proposing is consistent with what's right next to it. We had originally proposed 13.5 feet for the setback. The HDC likes having the symmetry between the two properties, but rather than having 2 doors for this duplex, asked us to enclose the front area, have 1 door walking into a hallway kind of situation, and that brings us to a 10-foot setback rather than a 13.5-foot setback. The special exception we're seeking tonight is from section 4.2.
I'm sorry, Attorney Tilsley, can I just pause here? I
Yeah.
just want to make sure I understand. Is this a different plan than what's in our packet then, with different setbacks shown?
Corey?
It should not be.
Okay, what I'm seeing is a 10 feet to the, it looks like the front door, but a 13.5 to the main structure of
Right,
the building.
13.5 was,
That front entryway isn't enclosed enclosed, so the setback goes to the
Okay.
enclosure. It's not just.
Okay.
Yeah.
So originally, the whole building was 13.5, now there's a front entryway
Right.
that's, okay.
Before the HDC, I'd be saying 13.5. Now that they want us to enclose it, we're at 10.
I understand.
Okay.
Okay, thank you for the
Okay.
clarification.
So the special exception is pursuant to sections 4.2 and 5.2 to permit the proposed construction of 3 two-family duplexes on the R2 portion of the lot. So that will include the duplex we just spoke about for the front setback variance, as well as 2 duplexes located more towards the rear of the lot. All 3 of those are in the R2 zone and therefore allowed by special exception. I'm going to give Corey Belden a chance to kind of go over the engineering details, and I'll come back to you with criteria after he's had a chance to do that.
Thank you. Corey Belden with Altus Engineering. I'm going to see if this works here, and it's not strong enough. That's okay. Oh, great. Perfect. So I'm just going to go over a little bit with on the site design. This is the existing site that Roy had discussed. It currently has 8 units on the site.
Excuse me, could you hang on a sec? Please? Thank you, Mr. Zwan. Go ahead.
Sure. There's currently 8 existing units on site. The structure at 35 High Street currently contains 6 units on that, between the existing structure and the extension on the back. And there's 2 single families, 8 High Street 8 Gilman Lane and 10 Gilman Lane. The proposal, as discussed, will be to do a lot merger, lot line adjustment, which will, can you go one more? Which will create an approximate 4-acre lot that will contain all of the new development. This is sort of an upper area. There's a observatory, Granger Observatory is located in this area. The site stormwater, part of the reason for this is the stormwater design will take place down in this area. The site drains down towards here. There's an existing outfall to the Exeter River down in this location. So we had gone through, I think we started back in February doing a lot of conceptual design for this site. And there was a lot of different options that were looked at. One of the goals for the academy is to really create a neighborhood, a faculty neighborhood with a diverse housing stock, meeting the goals of the and the needs for faculty housing on campus. So we have currently have 13 units total on site, and one of the other primary goals was actually to provide better access to the site and to the ball fields. There's a Unitil substation, DPW, town DPW pump station down in the back. So this current intersection at Gilman Lane is really a very poor intersection. If traffic is here, you're turning, making a left-hand turn into here. You're going to back, you're backing up traffic here, trying to get out of here and make a left. Oops. Go back is also a very difficult movement. So what we're proposing, and we've had preliminary discussions with engineering department, is to close off this curb cut and provide all access through the signalized intersection here, creating a roadway that comes through and loops down, going towards the back down to the ball fields.
Are you going to take some of the back off of what used to be Foster's to make that road a little bit wider, or? Okay,
Yes,
35 High Street corner, something.
yeah,
35 High Street.
because now it goes.
There's a bay window, there's a bay over on the, that
On the
side.
back.
On the
There's an
back side,
extension
yeah,
there, yeah.
and we'll be taking that off.
So that they'll
And-
make a bigger corner on that.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, the whole back extension of 35 High Street, is going to be removed. So just the existing front structure is going to be, actually, they've been going to HDC, and this project has been approved by HDC. It's going to be basically gutted and reconstructed with the existing framing of the building.
And then you'll talk to somebody about the light.
Yes, yeah, and we've had preliminary discussions with engineering about the signalized intersection, doing what we need to do.
Could you
And we'll
re-
do that as we go through technical review and site design, correct?
May I?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Could you do a quick survey of who was impacted by the closure of Gilman Lane?
Well, and can you explain, whether that will be a full closure and what public access will be?
Public access will be through the new access. The easement will still remain that goes through this area, and the existing road will basically come down and will basically end here at this, the new duplex driveway. So we're really, you're closing off, we want to close the curb cut completely so that there's no access at this point. It could be an emergency access.
I was going to
if
say, I
needed.
can't imagine the fire department would be thrilled about having to drive a truck all the way around to get to that house.
And
That one, yeah.
this one is also owned by Phillips Exeter Academy, and their parking is on the side, so they would also have access from the light coming over and parking at their site as well.
But both Unitil and the town still require access. There's that,
Yep, Unitil in the town
Carded
will still,
gate or
will
something
still
that's
have
there.
access, and we're making, this would be, this existing road is about 16 feet wide. And again, very poor access and curb cut. This would be a signalized intersection, 22-foot wide road coming through. Again, we'll go through site review, site plan review, and there, access easement would be provided to both the town and Unitil to use this roadway to get to the back. And then also, as we said, this 30-foot wide easement, we're not putting anything over that easement. And we'd provide access. The road goes to here. It would just be a short section that we would sort of grass off if we needed to do something more stable, like a heavy-duty turf that could be driven over. We could still do something like that. But we'll be going through technical review and talking to the fire department about access. Again, ideally, we would close that off so that people are not using that.
so just for clarification, the building that's currently at 35 High Street would be retained but improved, with the exception of the extension behind it, which would come down.
Correct.
There'd be an entirely new building next to it. And where there's currently, you said, a single family, that would come down and be replaced by a triplex.
Yes.
And then it's new construction behind it.
Yeah, and that other building, 8 Gilman Lane, is currently going through HDC.
No, I know you don't have final approval
So,
from HDC.
but that is the current plan, correct?
8 is the new one, the one that's 10, 13 and a half. Is that 8 Gilman?
8 Gilman is the one, correct? Yeah, is this is 8 Gilman here.
Oh, the one you want to tear down?
The one
Got
we
it.
want to tear down, 10
Got it.
Gilman, is going to remain as a single family in the back that will remain for the project.
Okay, is that the one that's described as concrete on your chart? I couldn't figure that out exactly. Sorry, I'm not letting you get very far with your presentation.
It's referred to as Stuckey House. I'm not sure what you're talking, that, on this one here, it's referred to as the report Stuckey House.
Stuckey's that little one out back there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it says on the map, 1-story, number 36 High Street, 1-story concrete, which I couldn't figure out what that was.
Oh,
Looks
probably
like it's 35 High Street.
Is that something we give you?
Yep.
That's on the existing conditions plan.
Okay. So it's over.
Okay.
So, yeah, because
Yeah.
I was a little, so it looks like just to make sure I fully understand, yeah, that building, I can't see what it's marked as,
Here?
not that, but behind.
Yeah, I think that's 35 or 36
That's-
High Street.
That's marked as 2 Gilman on the below, but I think we understand.
Only 1-story concrete. I assumed that was that little gray building. I drove back
Yeah.
there this afternoon.
That's,
kind of foundation or something?
Probably because it's got a foundation.
It says Gilman.
You're correct. I mean, it's on the existing on the survey that was done. That's the surveyor's, this mislabeled.
Yeah, there's some mislabels on the survey plan.
Mr. Chair, I had a question about just the pedestrian access, or does that road still, is a public road, or is it taken over by the academy? Because currently, people can walk down there.
They can walk, but it is a private road and will remain private and owned by the academy.
Gilman Lane at present is a private road?
Really? That's news to me.
Does it have a right of way?
Well,
You have to wait,
that-
sir.
Yeah, you have to wait. But
Yeah.
that is,
Well,
I mean,
but-
I do have a question about public rights, I think,
Right.
you know, too. It is, as I'm sure that, you know, certainly the folks in the academy are aware, it gets a lot of traffic through there by the public.
Right.
to Access.
And-
Yeah, if you could, that would be great.
And I mean
So-
pedestrian traffic.
If you'd
So-
identify yourself
Yeah,
first,
it's
please.
all
good.
pedestrian traffic, because there's a gate.
There's a gate, yeah.
Right. So, good evening. Mark Layton, Director of Facilities for the Academy. So, it is a private drive, but obviously, we allow people to walk down through there. That's why there is a gate. So, the idea is, with the new construction, oops, let me go with so the road, we basically want to relocate Gilman to here, right, for the advantages we talked about. There will be a sidewalk that will go across here and connect back down to here. So we're not closing it to the public. It's the use of it will be exactly the same as it is right now. We're not intending to change that. It's just what we are. As a matter of fact, we're improving it because of the sidewalk that's being added. But it is a private, I mean, this is private property with right-of-way and easements for the utility, for the town of Exeter and Unitil, but that's it.
Is it your intention then that pedestrians not use the existing Gilman Drive, even if it's just
Correct.
some sort of easy-to-walk-over landscaping? I mean, you're not going to put up a wall, obviously.
No, but we actually don't want people to walk this way. We want people to go this way if they're going to come down. So, I mean, the idea is that we'll have, as you can see here, there's parking here for this new unit. So, the Historic District Commission approved the work here and has approved this. We're still in discussions about this here. But the idea is that this is parking for this new unit. What we do not want to have people to walk through here. We're fine to have them come this way. But this is going to be, you know, land or associated with a duplex that's here, and so it's going to be like somebody walking across the lawn. But again, we'll go through this under the planning board process and site plan review.
Understood. But it's helpful to understand
Sure.
what the intent is here.
Right, and you know, with Altus and Corey's design, I mean, very, very mindful of turning radiuses, and you know, this is access for emergency vehicles to the stadium, so we have to make sure that emergency vehicles get down here, because the only other way is that's a Cross Hill Bridge, which will not take a fire truck. So it's definitely being designed with that intent. So it's emergency vehicles, utility vehicles, DPW vehicles, construction vehicles.
And frankly, this is more curiosity because I live nearby there, and it's sort of out of our purview, and I know it's planning board, but I'm still curious. So that is, you know, that's a lighted intersection. Is the intent that that'll be switched to a four-way, or what is the traffic going to be?
So it's actually currently, there's a signalized intersection. There's a signal for the driveway for 35 High Street at this location. So just going back to, to this. So there's currently 6 units here, and they all park here. When they come out of their driveway, they have a signal. There's a loop detector in their driveway, and they park here, and it signalizes the intersection. They get a green light. So it's currently signalized for this. So it's really it almost currently is a 4-way
Are they going
intersection.
to be able to turn both ways, just out of curiosity?
Yes, they would be able to turn, go straight or turn left or right coming out of here as they currently do. Again, talking with, we're going through engineering, with them, whether there needs to be any modifications to this. But we don't see anything very significant. All the lighting is there. They already have the lights for this movement. We'll be widening the roadway in here, providing better access.
So
At
that
this point-
light is currently, since Foster's went out in the business uses, it's only used by the residents of the one building.
Correct.
And it now will be used by the residents of how many buildings and how many residents?
So currently it's used by 6 and it'll be used by 13.
So it's a doubling of the amount, more than that, a doubling of the amount of, okay.
But they won't be coming out of Gilman anymore.
Won't
But
be
they
coming
won't-
out of Gilman, but
this'll be
that's a
plot.
tough intersection that backs up pretty significantly already, and there'll be a lot more traffic going in and out.
Yeah, they come to the hospital.
Okay. That's not ZBA, that's just me talking.
It's just you getting stuck on High Street.
We'll come visit you.
Happens every
I
day.
watch everyone sit out there in the traffic, but
Happens every day.
thank you.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think we've gone through a lot of the site plan.
Do you have, I am interested, you had, renderings with the aerial, but do you have elevations that you can share with us?
We have elevations this is for the duplex.
But
For the-
not for the,
No,
the which
part of our
duplex?
Oh, we do have both? Are they in
Yeah,
here?
I mean, that may be where, if you would like to, we have Rob Harbison from Arkansas Architects, if you would like to have him.
I'd like to see them. I realize we've really disrupted your presentation,
Are
so
they
I'm
in here?
happy to wait if you wanted to go through others, or if he wants to jump in, that would
There
be
we go.
great.
This
I
is-
have one quick question before you do, just to stay on the same theme, if I may.
Sure.
I just want to clarify, does the structure at 25 High Street, which I recognize is not an Academy property, have any rights or any usage over Gilman Drive?
No.
Okay.
And so we've met with Mr. Nell at that property, and so we've talked through this, and we're willing to give him a piece of what is our property to clean up and give him a little bit of extra room at his driveway. Our property line right now actually goes into where his driveway is, so we're going to work with him to do a lot line adjustment so that he gets a little bit of a buffer there
Okay.
on his piece, so.
Thank you.
Good evening, Rob Harbison from Market Square Architects in Portsmouth. I just live around the corner in Stratham, and my wife actually grew up in Exeter and is still here, so. This is the new duplex on High Street. And so this has been approved by the HTC, but essentially it's trying to replicate the mass and form of some of the other colonial structures on High Street. It's very similar to, I think, a lot of what you see. It is a duplex, but that's part of the conversation with HTC. You see that, that front entry area was built out as kind of a portico to mask the fact that it's a duplex, to make it feel like a single door on the street. And that's the garage side elevation. So that actually, that elevation faces Gilman Lane. And the details.
So
layout.
just the house will be on the front, and the garage will be on the back.
Correct. So the front, that's the front elevation that faces High Street.
So that's all you'll see.
Correct. Oh, there you go. Yeah. This is the elevation that faces High Street. This is the side that faces left to 35 High Street. So that's that garage mass in the rear of the building. This is the side elevation that faces Gilman, so those are the two garages. So Gilman Lane comes down here. This is where it becomes a landscape area, and we truncate that drive, and there is a turnaround at the end. And then those are the associated details and plans. So again, here, High Street is Page North, and this faces the athletic fields. This is the triplex in the back. So this is a unit. There's a center unit. This is a unit. This is the portion that faces that interior road. You can see by the garage door. Both of the ends are very similar. They have a porch, garage door, and an entry area. This is the elevation that faces sort of that interior courtyard created by the front three buildings, the landscape area. And this is the other end, again, very similar to the first end. So this is that triplex in the middle of the property. This building, we are still in conversations with the HTC. It has not been approved.
So this is entirely faculty housing, there's no student housing at all in these structures, thank you.
It's faculty housing, and there's a few different types. So there's single families with maybe a couple more bedrooms, and then the 35 High Street, for instance, is two apartments that are 2-bedroom units. Most of them, I think, have 4 bedrooms, essentially.
If you only go 4. towards the back. The other way.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go towards the gate.
So, and then this is the duplex that's in the rear of the property. And these are intentionally, they're sort of traditional forms, traditional details, but a little bit of a step away from the historic, kind of intentionally, where the historic buildings, a part of the HDC, are in the front. These buildings are outside of the HDC. Oops.
By approximately 4 inches, I say.
The front one is. The front one is. And that's a rendering in the rear of the property. So that's the triplex on the left, and this is the interior road with the duplex and the single family in the back.
And
Skip ahead.
they're gonna have
Oh, that's it.
they will have a walk around or everything so that you're not a sidewalk on all of these?
So that sidewalk, I'm gonna go back to that site plan. I know I'm jumping around the set here.
So there's only gonna be one sidewalk?
But yeah, so the sidewalk comes down along this side
Yeah,
and remains on that side and terminates basically where that gate is that goes back to the extension of Gilman Lane down to the athletic fields.
So
So
they
the
only-
the shaded area here is the portion that is outside of the HDC. And they have this drive that comes over to the existing Stuckey garage. And so this is a single family and 2 duplexes in the back. Those are essentially identical other than color and some details. This is the triplex where we're still in conversation with the HDC, so that's that center road. This here, you see the truncation of Gilman Lane, although there is a turnaround at that end. This is the new duplex that's been approved on High Street, and then this is the existing 35 that's being renovated.
It's all right.
So there's a back earlier.
I think we're getting off of the variance here.
Are there any specific questions on design, or does that give you the
No,
flavor?
that was very helpful.
That's helpful, thank you very much.
Just one last thing, and we already talked about, obviously we have to go through site plan review, subdivision, or site plan subdivision review with the planning board. We've already met with the Exeter River Advisory Board, so we've reached out to them. This project is also going to require New Hampshire DES alteration of terrain permit, so we'll have a review from them, and we're going to be submitting a shoreline permit application because of the proximity to Exeter River. So we do have multiple reviews that we're going to go through, and this project will be looked at. Certainly for stormwater management, we're going to be providing, meeting all of AOT and the city's stormwater regulations, providing stormwater treatment and retention to a site that, there is currently was developed prior to any of those regulations. So we're going to looking to provide some significant improvements to the site as well.
you're not
So-
gonna put anything on the river, right? No dock or anything?
No, exactly. No, we're actually, we're really honoring the buffer and this tree line in through here. The observatory is right down here, and we're very sensitive to that. We want to have all dark sky lighting and preserve all of the tree line and buffer in this area as well. So that's.
So there'll be no
very-
docks out there or anything?
Nope. So. Oh, and then, so, going to go on to the site plan. Hopefully I'm going right, am I going the right direction? So the other, with the setbacks, we have, we're looking for the relief on the duplex on the front. As discussed, this has already been brought to HDC, and they're very supportive of keeping the front, this duplex in line with the other buildings along the street. So, we have the 10 foot, it's about 13 and a half feet to the face of the building, but with the enclosed entryway, we're at 10 feet here. On the back side, we're really trying, there's a 15-foot side setback along this property line, and we're really, I believe we're providing 25 feet in this area to try to provide some additional buffer along this property line in this location as well.
So the middle house is gonna be coming down, the one that's there now?
Sorry, which house?
That big, huge house sits on the right, that is coming down?
Yes. The one in the
It's-
middle?
Yeah.
It's, again, that's the one that's currently going through HDC.
As far as dealing with bringing it down and,
As far as dealing with bringing, exactly,
okay,
yeah.
it's just,
All right, back to me. They gave me the clicker, look out. All right, so to go back to the variance. Okay, there we go. So the variance from section 4.3 to allow the front duplex to have a 10-foot setback where 25 feet is required in the R2 zone. If this were the C1 zone, it would be a 10-foot required setback. This is the line between R2 and C1, so you can see how close we are to the C1 zone. 35 High Street, which is in the C1 zone, has a 10-foot setback. The HDC actually liked the idea that we were lining up, similarly situating this duplex similar to the duplex at 35 High Street. Similarly, as you go down the road this way, just eyeballing it, whether it's a Google Maps or Tax Maps, and I think this one right here is 9 feet. Many properties are closer than 10 feet from their lot lines. This is 11 here and 9 here, and as you go down, looks like there's properties that are 3, 4, and 5 feet that close. So this is consistent with many other properties in the area. I'd also note that we have in front of the lot line a sidewalk area, a concrete sidewalk, so there's about a 5-foot area here with a granite curb. So there's a little bit of additional buffering and certainly some separation from traffic in the front of the lot here as well. In terms of the variance criteria, I always cover the first two together, not contrary to the public interest and consistent with the spirit of the ordinance. Essentially, courts have said on these criteria to look to see whether the proposal alters the essential character of the neighborhood. In this case, the essential character of the neighborhood are that most of the properties have a 10-foot or less setback. There are very few properties located far off of High Street as you walk. Let me get this going again. As you walk down in this direction, the properties are very close to the boundary lines. Again, 9 feet here, I think a little bit less than 10 feet here. We're proposing 10 for the entranceway and 13.5 for the overall structure of the building. And there has to be no threat to public health, safety, or welfare. Certainly, the existing sidewalk and elevated curb help to provide an additional buffer, help to address any concerns that the property is too close to the roadway and some kind of traffic interference or things like that. Our front walk will be connected to the sidewalk, so there'll be easy pedestrian access if this variance is granted. From our perspective, and obviously this will be an issue really for the planning board, but we believe that closing off Gilman Lane and directing traffic out through this signalized intersection will be a benefit for the safety and for safety and for traffic flow. This is a difficult area to get in and out of. It's kind of dark, it's kind of narrow, and it really makes sense to have a wider area at a signalized intersection for traffic to get in and out, so there'll be a benefit there as well. Criteria number 3 is that the variance has to do substantial justice. There's really no gain to the public by strict enforcement of the ordinance. In this case, we already have many properties on this street within 10 feet of their boundary lines in terms of front setbacks. So to suddenly require us to go to 25 feet really doesn't benefit the public, and in fact, kind of creates an outlier that doesn't really make much sense here, which we think the HDC recognized. The loss to the applicant is significant. It'll be hard for us to comply with HDC if we don't get the variance. It limits what we can do for faculty housing on this particular footprint. And again, the goal was to create something that is consistent with what's there, that kind of matches the property at 35 High Street, and I think preserves the historic nature of this area, and the setback allows us to do that. The value of surrounding properties will not be diminished by granting this variance. Again, this setback is consistent with those surrounding properties. So having a 10-foot setback when every other property, or not every other, but most other properties on the street have the similar thing, will have no negative effect on surrounding property values. Unnecessary hardship. There's a plan that shows this fairly well. Okay. So the special condition of the property is sort of, I think it's unique location at the intersection of Portsmouth Ave and High Street, as well as Gilman Lane. This area, Lot 35, is the C1 portion of the property. This area that gets developed is R2. We're on the fringes of the R2 district here, so we have what's going to be a combined lot from a zoning perspective on really the outskirts of the R2 district, kind of I don't want to say conversion, but kind of an area where we're starting to make the change, but haven't gone hard to R2 yet. You can also see on this plan, you can see how close, and just eyeball on the tax map, it's not the same as it, but you can see how close these buildings are to High Street. They're clearly closer than 10 feet or 13 feet as we're proposing. This is a unique area because it really, again, you've got this one piece of, oops, what did I do? This is why they don't give me the thing. Okay. Yeah, I'm getting way beyond my expertise when you start putting up those drawings. And how do I zoom in? Because I did.
Next slide.
Oh, here we go, okay. So this is a unique area because it's, again, a blend of commercial and residential. It's on the outskirts of the residential district, and we're trying to find a way to use it in a way that kind of marries those particular uses. As a result of this special condition, there is no fair and substantial relationship between the 25-foot setback requirement and its application to the property. Again, as a transition area, it makes sense to have something that's sort of between what C1 and R2 require. It's consistent with what's there in the rest of the neighborhood. Again, particularly along this area here. It makes little sense to push this duplex back when most properties are even closer. The existing sidewalk and elevated curb, again, provide additional buffering that make the need for a 25-foot setback less severe. And the proposed use here is reasonable. Duplexes are allowed by special exception. We're complying with the requirements of the HDC, and again, the HDC has viewed our attempt to line this up with 35 High Street as a favorable aspect of the proposal, even though it doesn't meet the 25-foot setback, and it's consistent with the rest of the neighborhood. Moving on to the special exception.
Do we
I
want to
have
just
a,
discuss?
can we go back to that picture?
We just
Sure.
go through the variance first and have them go through the special exception?
There we go.
This is just a question of information. See where the N ends on Gilman Lane?
Yep.
Who owns, I see like the first 4 lots or whatever go all the way back to the river? All the way to the left.
These 4 lots?
Yeah, go back, according to the lot, look like they go all the way back to the river.
Okay.
Who owns from the last lot line all the way around the corner, right, like
Like these lots?
to
No,
the
that
right?
extension,
So who owns all that?
That's all part of the PA,
So the academy owns it all?
Correct.
Okay. Well, that's just for
Yeah.
information.
That's the larger observatory lot, with a portion of which will become part of this 4-acre.
Right, so, but all that, the
Yeah.
Academy owns, okay.
Yep, okay. Okay, the special exception. So the special exception is to allow the 3 duplexes in the R2 zone. So, not 35 High Street, because that exists. It's a 6-unit now, it'll go to a duplex. But,
So just so I apologize for interrupting, but the triplex, so you're only asking for special exception relief for the 3 duplexes, the 3 new duplexes?
correct. I mean, the triplex is obviously part of the plan. It's there. We're dealing with HDC on it. We may get the triplex, we may not, I don't know, but it's not something that we're asking you
Well, I
folks
guess
to do
that's what I was a
anything
little
with.
confused, as I read it, unless I'm missing it, I mean, duplexes are permitted by special exception, but this is partially in the R2.
I believe the code enforcement officer's position, and correct me if I'm wrong, Corey, or if you think, but our understanding of it was because the triplex will be located in both zones, that it was allowed because it's, a good chunk of it is in the C1 zone. It wasn't called out as an area that we need relief for.
So the lot line adjustment does not impact the underlying zoning.
Correct.
So partially, the new lot will still be in 2 different zones.
Correct.
And the building itself will be in 2
Two
different
different zones.
Right, so here's the triplex, here's the old lot line, which is also the zone line. So you can see the triplex, if in fact we're able to proceed with it, will be, I think, this is the lawyer's eyeball, not the engineer's calculation, primarily in the C1 and not the R2 zone. And our understanding from staff was that in that situation, it's considered to be in C1 and triplexes are allowed in C1 because the building itself is in both.
Multifamilies.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, and we don't have to get into that tonight.
Yeah, no,
'cause you're not
that's,
here asking
that's
the
right,
request. Okay.
right, that's informational.
But that's helpful to know just the limit of what we're being asked to
Yeah.
approve tonight.
So from a special exception perspective, the variance is for the 3 duplexes in R2. One is the one duplex we've been speaking about right on Front Street. The second one is these duplexes, this duplex here, and this duplex here, both of which are in sort of the rear of the property, both of which basically, the only common wall is the garage in the middle. But they're both in R2, so we need special exception for those 3 duplexes. Keep in mind, as a special exception, duplexes are an allowed use in this zone, as long as we satisfy you that we meet the criteria for a special exception. This is not a case where we're asking for a variance or relief from the ordinance. We simply have to show you that we comply with the ordinance. As Corey pointed out, I think you can see it a little better in this plan. For this particular one, kind of on the side here, the normal side setback would be 15 feet, and that's that purple dotted line. We've got, I think, 20.5 feet on this particular side, and I think 25.5 here. So we have a little bit more room between this particular abutting property, or these abutting properties, than what's required. We're also proposing, and you can see it, yeah, you can see it fairly well here. So these are the 2 duplexes in the back. See that there'll be a 6-foot-high fence here, which will provide some buffering along the property line as well, for the neighbors located in this particular area. Special exception criteria under section 5.4. Number 1, the use has to be permitted by the zoning ordinance. Article 4.2, section 1 does provide that duplexes are specifically allowed by special exception in the R2 zone. Criteria number 2, the use is designed, located, and proposed to be operated so that the public health, safety, welfare, and convenience will be protected. We are providing on-site parking, so there's no issues with parking. As we've discussed already, we're providing all access, ingress and egress along from the signalized intersection with a wider curb cut than what currently exists in Gilman Lane. with the road that leads to all of the particular properties here. We believe that that will be a better, safer way of getting in and out of the property than having people go through Gilman Lane, which again is kind of a dark, narrow, sort of a road-looking thing, sort of a driveway-looking thing. So this will be much more of a road, be wider, and be signalized. It'll be pedestrian-friendly, walkable project. It's designed to be that type of neighborhood where the kids can ride their bikes. We'll have direct access onto the sidewalk out front. All of that, we believe, will be benefit for public health, safety, and welfare. Number 3, the proposed use is compatible with the zoning district in adjoining post-1972 development where it is located. At this point, the neighborhood really is predominantly multifamily, and we believe that this is compatible with that particular type of use in the multifamily. Corey went through today, and again, just getting us oriented. So these are properties in question. That's 35 High Street. He's indicated all the properties in the neighborhood that are either duplexes or multifamily. And you can see, it's along High Street, it's most of the properties are duplexes and multifamily. So we believe that this is, in fact, consistent with the neighborhood, consistent with this particular district, which again is a transition between the C1 and R2 district. You can see maybe a little bit better here, but if I could zoom out even more, you can see how the light purple is the R2. So you can see what a big district this is, and it keeps going. And again, we're right here in this transition area, which, we believe it's appropriate to kind of have a transition-y type of development here rather than a straight R2 development on this particular lot. Adequate landscaping and screening. I talked about the fencing. I spoke about particularly the side buffers along the back. It's our intention to create an area that is appropriately screened from other abutters and other people in the neighborhood who could be affected by this development. Adequate off-street parking. All of the parking will be provided on site. There's no on-street parking. As you've seen, we have garages and we have parking areas, and you can see some of that depicted on this as-built type of plan. Again, we're adding just 5 units to what's there now, so it's not maybe as big of a difference as it would look at first blush. Number 6, the use has to conform with all applicable regulations governing the district. The only one we didn't comply with is that 25-foot front setback. If we get variance relief from that, then we would meet that requirement easily. Number 7 is that this board, as a condition of a special exception, can require planning board review. As we've told you, that's going to be required anyway for both the lot line adjustment and the site plan. So, and I always appreciate the desire to be, to understand the big picture, but a lot of those details will get flushed out at that level when we get in front of the planning board to talk about all of those sort of technical planning details. Hopefully, once we have the variance and special exception in hand. Number 8, the use will not adversely affect surrounding property values. Again, the duplex and multifamily uses are consistent with this neighborhood, so it won't affect those property values. We have adequate buffering and screening. We're meeting side and rear setbacks. We believe this development, as proposed, creates a nice little faculty housing village that is walkable and accessible, a nice family area, and we believe an improvement over what's there now, so that this should actually help property values, not diminish them in any fashion if you grant the special exception. Categories 9 and 10 don't apply to this project. Category 9 deals with storage of hazardous materials. That's not relevant to a residential project. And category number 10 calls out certain specific lots in town for special treatment, which are not part of what this application is about. So we believe we meet those criteria. The Academy's excited about the project. It gives us the opportunity to address a real need for faculty housing, while also, I think, developing a well-planned project that will be a benefit to the town and the neighborhood. And again, tonight, it's really relatively straightforward. It's the one special exception for front setback, and then the special exceptions to allow the 3 duplexes in R2. And the rest of this will go to HDC planning and all the other places Corey told you about. So thank you for your attention. We're happy to take any additional questions, although you weren't shy the first time, which is great. We appreciate your attention. Thank you, folks.
I think we do have one question
Yep.
for you.
So, in the special exception criteria number 2, health, public health, safety, welfare, and convenience. I do have a concern that by approving this, we're increasing dramatically the number of people that will be using the light, or will be accessing High Street in that stretch, whether it's Gilman Lane combined with the existing light for 35 High Street, all of that traffic will, I like the idea of it going through the light. I don't like the fact that the light is going to be coming on and off, on and off, on and off more frequently. I'm wondering if a traffic study is planned or is required.
I don't know that one's required, Corey. I think that would be up to the planning board when they
I'm
scope it
sorry.
out, but I'll let you.
We can hear you, but it won't get picked up on the video unless you're at the mic. So if you're speaking, if you could please.
And that will be something that we'll flesh out through site plan review. And obviously, we've had some preliminary discussions with the town about closing off Gilman Lane, and it was supported that is a poor, and undesirable intersection location, that close to a signalized intersection. It's a poor access. There's limited ability to make left-hand turns in and out of that. So it was supported that we would relocate that to a signalized intersection and then do whatever improvements, if there is some timing and adjustments that need to be made to that intersection, we'll work through that with the town.
Okay.
Chris?
What happens if the HDC tells you that, for the sake of argument, that you have to keep that building in the middle?
I mean, I think we go back, I don't know that it necessarily changes what we're doing today.
Would that have any effect on the 3 buildings or the 2 buildings on the back that we're giving you a variance on?
I don't believe so.
It's just the variance, it's just the building in the front.
Special exception for.
Special exception,
Right.
the 3 in the, would that have, I mean, is that gonna change their plans and have to, is that gonna do anything to that?
Yeah, go ahead.
So if that, and Rob, if you want to talk as well, if that building if it is required
right.
that it maintains, it would be converted into a duplex. So there would be that would also become a duplex. We'd probably be coming back to you.
So you're
if
pretty.
that is the case.
So what we are suggesting now is that the 2 buildings in the back, and then you might have to change the big one that you're hoping to bring down to a duplex.
The triplex that's in the middle.
Right.
If
they say, I'm
say-
just asking if they say, you have to keep it up.
right, if you have
I
to
don't
keep
know
up-
what they're gonna say, but if they say that you're gonna have to keep it up, that's gonna go to a duplex.
Well, if I can just speak, I mean,
Go right ahead.
we're gonna deal with these plans as presented.
Okay, so if something changes,
if there
they
are
have to come
changes that
back.
affect the requested relief, they would have to come back.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't think we know what would happen, but if we come up
I'm
with
just-
something that requires us to get additional relief, we
You
come back
have to
for
come
it.
back.
But I don't think it's gonna change the fact that we need the variance for the 3 duplexes that
No,
we're
I'm
going to build
just,
now.
I didn't know if it was easier to wait and make sure you knew what you were doing and getting it once, or doing it. All right, I'm fine.
I had one last
Okay.
question on the road, which are the,
Please.
so it's basically a new road that becomes at that intersection, it's a brand-new road.
I mean, there's a driveway there now that's part of the signalized intersection. It becomes, much more of a roadway. It becomes wider and obviously goes deeper into the property.
Okay, but it's
Yeah.
really, that is just another private road.
It would be a private,
Actually.
I mean, I guess, yes, at this point, it would be a private road. There's no,
Okay, I just want to be clear
Yeah,
on that.
yeah.
Because that's where you're talking about the maybe technically people, that's the only access point to replace Gilman Lane access point, correct?
Well, I'm assuming this would become the new Gilman Lane.
Well, that's what I'm assuming, I'm just trying to say, if
Yeah.
no one's really said that yet, it becomes a new Gilman Lane somehow, or it becomes a new road, private or not, it's a new road.
Correct,
All right?
correct. There's
We're
no
not
street
saying
sign there now. I don't think there's any name for that driveway.
All right.
You presumably would put a name on it.
I think it is marked as Gilman Lane. It's certainly marked on all the local maps.
No, the
No,
one
I'm
next to,
talking about
the
the
one
new
next
one.
to the,
The new,
the one there doesn't have anything on
there's
it.
no intersection, we're talking about
Oh,
an intersection,
yes.
there's no road, right?
It's,
I understand.
it's essentially a realignment of Gilman Lane coming from the ball field, sorry.
Right.
Realignment of Gilman Lane that comes down, instead of coming out and teeing here,
Right.
Gilman Lane
Wow.
now comes down, curves over, and tees up with the intersection.
Right,
So
I
it
thought
would,
that.
it would be
Right.
maintained, same thing. It's, existing Gilman Lane is a private road, it would be maintained as a private road as
All
well.
right, I just want to be clear on that, because.
Have
it's
you-
really- It's clear to us, but it's not necessarily clear to the rest of the world that it's.
Have you talked to what used to be High Street Market? Is any of that gonna be part of the light at all, or?
I've talked to the owners of 37, or 39 High Street.
So we'll call on that High Street Market, just so I know.
Yeah, same
Okay.
building.
Yeah, so
fine.
that, they're our butter, yes, I've talked to the owner of that.
Yeah.
And we're not proposing any changes with his driveway and with this connection.
So I mean, but would changing the light have any effect on him or her?
Not that I know of. I mean, his driveway does not trigger the light.
No, but I mean, would it make it easier and to get into his?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I think that's something we can review, through the site planning as
I
far as
mean,
that.
it might,
Yeah.
I mean, getting in and out of there is a big,
Yeah,
Right.
it doesn't, he's raised to me his concerns about coming out of his driveway, and
okay. I'm
typically
just,
has to go to the right.
Okay,
Unless he's
just-
lucky.
And I assume, Chris, the planning board will cover that. I mean, it is kind of a mess getting in and out of there, but I
Right.
don't think
Yeah.
it really is within the
especially if you're not
relief
taking a
that's
right.
being requested of us tonight.
Okay.
So, any further questions for the applicant? Okay, anything you'd like to add for now?
Not
You'll
now.
have a
I mean,
chance.
I'll reserve my right.
I'm gonna open it up
Yep.
to the public now, so anyone who'd like to speak to this application? Please state your name and address.
Anthony Zwan, 7 Marlborough Street. I am in a butter. I live right here. That's me, right there. I have a barn that sits over here. So this property abuts my property. My neighbor, Nick, was intending to be here as well, couldn't make it. But we've talked extensively, and we roughly of the same mind. There's a lot to react to here. I mean, in some ways, yeah, the applicant is making a pretty straightforward request for the setback from 25 feet to 10 feet or something along those lines, and I don't think there's too much heartburn about that. Although it should be noted that gives the applicant an additional 15 feet to work with to squeeze in as many units as they can behind it. But certainly from a, fitting in the neighborhood, I don't think there's any huge opposition to that. And then there's the request for 3 duplexes, which a lot of comments have been made about. I am of the opinion that it's really not consistent with the neighborhood, and I think my opinion is just as valid as their opinion in that regard. So I just want you to slow down a little bit, and a lot of information. This is a big development in a key location, and a lot of things have been thrown around out here, and there are a lot of things to react to that maybe don't speak directly to those 2 requests, the 10-foot rather than the 20 feet and the duplexes. A couple of things that have been said along the lines of, well, that'll be fleshed out by the planning board. As you know, I've served on the planning board. And, the site plan review will take care of it, and I guess that's Doug over there. But, don't, or maybe not, but he said, maybe not. But Doug's boss, our, got it. But nonetheless, the planning department. But remember that, your approvals severely limit subsequent review. So don't fall for that. I've been on the other side of that, and I'm sure you're very sensitive to that as well. So I would submit that it's a shame that there are as many units on this development as there are. As is usually the case, there are more units than we care for. Remember that the applicant is trading 6 units up front into 2 units, which forces 4 more units into the back, by my understanding. So I may be wrong about that, but I just want to point that out, that pushes additional units into the back where they affect us, all right? So just wanted to react to that a little bit. The other thing I would say is that the relocation of Gilman Lane, which I know doesn't directly affect your decision tonight, nonetheless needs to be reacted to. It's, the relocation of Gilman Lane is predicated on the tearing down of 8 Gilman, right? The big building, big white building. So it's predicated on that, number one. And it's also predicated on the fact that it's going to be built right up to the property line of what used to be the High Street Market, according to the plans. So there's going to be a sidewalk right on the property line. There's no buffer, no nothing, okay? Just want to point that out, that'll be fleshed out in the planning board and the site plan review, but your approval sets that train in motion. Also, with the duplex located near the back of my property, yes, it meets the setback requirements. I would submit, though, that a 6-foot high fence is not buffering and is not adequate screening, and doesn't leave a whole lot of room for adequate screening. And in that regard, I think that the plans as presented really don't fairly present the lack of buffering that is going to be the end result of this thing. So keep that in mind, because in fact the trees that you see here, they're on Academy property, so they're going to be gone, okay? So just be very, very clear about the fact that this is not an accurate representation of what will ultimately be left. So just to be clear, we're talking about, a road here that will be right onto the property line of the abutter. We're talking about at most 25 feet here, which those families are going to need for fun. There's not going to be room for buffering there. And we're talking about also, and I'm reacting to a lot of different things, we're talking about public access to some extent here. I'll just remind you that when the Court Street development was proposed, which was a good development and well executed, a fair amount of discussion was had about the public access to the sports fields at that time. I sat on the board. There used to be a beautiful archway and some granite stairs that went down there, if you recall that. And they were sacrificed for that development, which is fine. But a lot of discussion was had about, how are people going to be able to access the areas that the public has historically been privy to accessing. And there was a lot of assurance made that that was going to be maintained. And there is actually, if you look around there's actually a little path that was an effort at honoring that commitment. But in reality, that did not happen. Now, practically speaking, it doesn't matter. People use that area by the gym, but I just want to point out to you that that was a pretty lengthy discussion that was had that was not followed through on. So, given this the green light, even in the limited request tonight, does set into motion a whole lot of other concerns that I think are going to be difficult for the planning board and site plan review to reconcile. And again, it's not so straightforward. There is so much more to react to, but I am not equipped to do that, particularly since I'm doing all of this on short notice and on an ad lib basis, but with 5 days before Christmas. But I urge you to consider it slowly and carefully. I'm a little disappointed in what they're trying to shoehorn in here, particularly in comparison to what they did on Court Street, which I think was pretty nicely done. I think single-family style homes, detached homes would be more consistent with the neighborhood. There's plenty of examples of that. Even right along High Street, all those tiny little homes, yeah, they're closely spaced, but they are single-family homes. And there's plenty of examples in this town of closely spaced, detached, single-family homes, little New Englanders. This is totally out of character with the neighborhood. So that I will leave it with. I'm sure at the end of the day, the Academy will do the right thing. Historically, they've done things that have been well executed. I'm a little disappointed in this one. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before you, well, there are no other members of the public, it appears, so, sorry.
Everyone else is
So,
on
yeah,
my
if you'd
team,
like
so
to
I hope
respond.
Okay, so a couple of responses. Again, the setbacks along these properties, we provided 25 feet where 15 are required. We're showing the fence. This fence is on the property line. So, these trees are abutters trees. Some of them are his trees. That's where we're showing the fence. If you look at the plan,
So actually, can I,
Yep.
so is that fence on the property line or in
yes,
from
if you look at the
property line?
plan, and you guys can tell me if I'm wrong, but if you look at the plan, the fence is on the property line.
So I actually think, so in the 3D, we're trying to drop it onto an aerial photo. So I think you are seeing the tops of some of the trees that are on the Academy property. We certainly have the ability to add some trees within that 25 feet where 15 is required back here. But I think the better plan to look at is actually so you can see there, those are the existing trees, and this is where the fence would go along the property line. So trees that are in this area would come down for the construction, and then within that 25, 30 feet that we have to the buildings back here, we can maintain a landscaping, and then everything on this side is obviously the abutters.
So I guess, I know you've talked to some of the abutters, but it doesn't sound like you have had these discussions with the folks on Marlborough
So
Street.
it says the landscaping.
I mean, I certainly understand the concern. It is a significant amount of existing trees that are coming down. Is there consideration of a bigger vegetative buffer rather than a 6-foot tree on the property line is not going to really shield shield the view.
So, do we have the existing conditions plan in this set? I'm not sure if we do.
We all have a copy.
We have it.
I know you have a copy. So, let's go to the landscape plan. It's in the back here. Oh,
The existing conditions plan does not show vegetation.
it shows the tree line, but
It
it
does.
does not show the surveyed trees. And this is the landscape plan. So currently, as we had mentioned, that it shows that the tree line comes the existing tree line comes right through here, but we don't have the surveyed actual trees. It's the canopy that really shows up on the survey. So they had shown some proposed trees in this location, but we also have the opportunity to look in this area and see which trees fall, within that buffer line, that can be preserved for the project as well. So if it's all junk, then it makes sense to remove it then. So I believe our landscape architect on the project had a similar opinion that a lot of those existing trees were not worth trying to save, and it would be best to plant some new trees in that area.
And I recognize that, that the landscape plan will be reviewed by the planning board, but I'm gonna let them respond. I'll give you a second turn, but I'm gonna let them respond to your comments first.
Yeah, I'll just add, again, Mark Layden, Director of Facilities, I'll just add that the fence was what we thought was a good delineation on the property lines. If 6 feet is not what you feel like is an adequate buffer, or if we wanted to go with planting something, we're open to that. I mean, it gets into, trees only last so long, shrubs only last so long, so, we can do a combination of things like that. Yes, so to answer your question, we are open to doing something or developing that buffer between the property lines. So, that was one of the drivers of giving more space. Instead of just meeting the setbacks, we wanted more space. This is the backyard of the faculty housing that's being proposed. So I think, yes, we would be open to suggestions on enhancing that buffer.
And open to a conversation with the abutters.
Yeah, I'll be open to, I think a lot of that's going to go under a site plan review also. I think it's, Anthony and I had a conversation several weeks ago. We didn't get into a lot of detail other than this is what the timeline was. I've had conversations with everybody except for Marlborough Street, so in that area. We had, the abutters on this project are over 80 abutters just because of what got triggered. So I've had conversations with 25 High Street, 39 High Street. Anthony and I have had a conversation, and so that's who I've talked to. But yes, we would open the conversation.
I understood it's a big lot and there's a lot of, but I will say that Marlborough is certainly the most impacted by the duplexes.
Yeah. Abutters across High Street, no, not so much.
So,
Franklin Street, not so much.
and sorry, and I'll let you continue your response.
I guess the only other point that I would make is, again, in terms of multifamilies in the area, we looked today and Corey identified what's in this, right along High Street, Marlborough Street, Gardner Street, Gilman Lane. This is not unusual for this neighborhood. Doing this sort of duplexes with the attached garage actually allows us to leave more green space, and rather than putting a single-family house 15 feet on the line, we can do something 25 feet away and work on that buffer, as opposed to push things out to the max. So that's part of what we're trying to accomplish
Yeah.
here.
I will note, just for the record, a couple of these, as you, on Marlborough Street, I can't speak to Gardner Street, I am familiar with, and that number 7 is not a two-family. And number 10, I think, is actually a commercial structure, weirdly enough, back there, but there is another two-family, I believe, that's behind that, so. But if you're gonna continue using that, I don't believe that's
I
accurate.
will say, this came directly from the town's database, so
It did.
if that's an error, then it should circulate to staff. I'm just,
Fair enough, fair enough. And then I guess I'd ask you to speak as well. I do take the point about public access. I do remember the conversation about Gilman Lane. It was the other side of Gilman Lane, but there was a commitment to keep it open to public access. It was a little different. That was public there, and we had to the town had to vote to close it. But I'd like to hear you speak to public access, because I do think that's going to be important. It's important to me. I think it's probably important to other folks, because as I'm sure you're aware, this area gets a lot of public use, and it's a real benefit to the town.
So in terms of public access to this area back here?
Public access to there's about I think 300 acres of trails.
Right.
That go out there a ways.
Right.
And so public access to the fields and those trails. And really the primary public access is through Gilman Lane.
You know, I think the answer, do you want to go, Mark? Or?
No, you go now.
Yeah, I mean, the answer is the access will now be on whatever we call this new road, whether the new Gilman Lane or whatever we choose to call it, but you'll have the same access, albeit you go around a couple curves, but you'll have the same access. Yeah.
I just want to I completely understand, and the Academy respects what you're saying. I guess I just want to emphasize that it is private property, right? So it's not a park where we have to do public. As a matter of fact, during the pandemic, we closed access, right? So and there's no plan to make any changes to what Gilman Lane allows now with this new development. But I think it's important to represent the Academy that it is private property, and we do reserve the right to close the trails like we did during the pandemic. It is different than when it was Gilman Street over on the Court Street project. That was, like you said, a town-owned property road that was given or we purchased, or however the legal. And you may remember, you might have been on the board of how that happened. And as far as I know, we're in compliance with all what was agreed upon in that process. So the town has not came to us and said we're out of compliance. We've done the signage that was agreed upon. So we've provided the public access, and that was actually a public access to a park, right, to Gilman Park that's right there. So that's what we had to maintain access to, was the bridge, the little footbridge, not to our property, but to that footbridge. That was what public access had to stay open to. So Mr. Chair, I just want to make sure, just as far as,
No, I understand. And
I just wanted to clarify that, but we are not intending to make any changes to the public access with this development.
Mr. Pryor?
Being in compliance is not the same as honoring tradition and honoring history and honoring the fact that there are many people who grew up walking on these roads and expect to be able to do it again in the future. And those people are not there to violate your private property. They're there to explore the river. They're there because it looks like a neighborhood. They're there because they've always done it. There are many of us who grew up in this town who are used to being able to walk with impunity on those grounds. Those of us who, I grew up in a house that's now owned by the Academy. And it bothers me to hear you use words like "we are in compliance," because I don't think that's necessarily the right spirit to take. That's an us and them mentality. Let me finish. I get one speech a night. This is my speech. That's an us and them mentality. And so I think you need to recognize the fact that during the time that I was sitting on Gilman Lane this afternoon doing my due diligence on this project, I observed at least 6 or 8 either individual people or couples walk from High Street down to go for a walk along the river, to go walk in the fields. And I think you need to recognize and respect that there are a lot of people who are going to want to go to football games. They're going to walk through there and cut through there. And I'm not sure that simply moving Gilman Lane is sufficient, but more, I also want to ask for a little appreciation for history and tradition and not just being in compliance. So thank you.
Sarah?
I just want to add a few things. One, because I was involved when the whole road the whole town voted to put Gilman.
Some voted for, some voted against.
I understand, but in the end of the day.
I know.
And they did Chadwick Lane, because believe me, I was one of the first people, as I probably have walked my dogs. I've been walking dogs out in that area since 2007 in various ways. I tend to go into Gardner Street. I would go to the old way, Gilman Road, park in the dirt parking lot, blah, blah. But what the Academy said they would do at that time, and they did, is they created Chadwick Lane. And they created all the parking there at Chadwick Lane, which is where I go now. I park at Chadwick Lane, that nice area where you can park, and I see a lot of other folks walking their dogs doing the same thing. It's also access to the fields. So I do think maybe the word compliance is a problem, but I do think that they were true to what they said they would do, and we asked for them to keep public access, and they did. So in fairness, I don't want to get into a thing where we're debating this, but in fairness, I think the Academy did do what it said it would do by Chadwick Lane becoming the primary access as opposed to the Gilman, where we had taken that over. So that's one thing. which, as I said, I was concerned about this road to begin with. When this whole conversation started, I'm concerned about that. But I also think there's plenty of pedestrian access as well. The vehicular can do Chadwick, otherwise people can just walk there. It is private property. We are very fortunate, extremely fortunate, to be allowed to walk out there. And I'm saying this because I've complained as much as anybody else. This is my one speech, and I'll stop. But I've complained as much as anybody else over the years to many people that my dogs have to be on leashes in places where they didn't used to be. And my dogs are always very well mannered, so they didn't run on the field, they didn't do anything. So I, complained about that to myself and muttered to myself. But we're still allowed out there. And so, it's private. So in fairness, my question was going to be more, if for lack of a better term, if you were regular developers, I mean, you're on the academy, and you're trying to have faculty housing, so I think it's different than just somebody building a bunch of houses. I don't know where we are in terms of density. To Dr. Zwan's point, I mean, it does seem like a lot. It seemed like a lot more than I realized you needed, that many faculty houses. I mean, O'Neill Court's beautiful. This does seem like a lot to me. But if it's the amount they're allowed to have, just like any other developer, I guess we really can't say no to that, because I think you've done a really nice job of how you want to situate everything. I guess that was my question. So in terms of is it truly shoehorned in there, or is there a way to say you can only do X amount in this? Because I'm the relatively new member here.
So it's your question to the applicant?
Well,
then?
it's sort of, I guess it is to the applicant, I guess, I don't know how it's,
So,
because if it
I think they
fits.
can speak,
Okay,
to that.
if it
Correct.
fits, it fits.
yeah, it does fit, and we've done the density calculations and provided those, and to Doug, and showing that with the C1 district, there's a different density, is 3,500. And within that, we're compliant, and then the area that's the R2 district, we're allowed, we're actually allowed one or two more units, I believe, by the area. So we're not,
Right, so I guess I'm saying it wrong.
yeah.
You
And we
can
had
do it.
looked at.
You can do it, but.
We can do it, and
you
we're
have to do it.
not,
I mean,
right,
then-
and we had looked at some other options with even, 16,
to.
17 units on site, and the academy was mindful of the space and wanted more open space for the, and that's part of the reason for some of the duplexes. If you tried to put 13 single-family houses in this area, what would it look like, right? So it maximizes open space, and we felt that it's really a nice development. So meets the needs of the faculty housing, provides green space, and we are compliant with density, as you said.
Right, okay, very good.
And just two other, I guess, responses. This project does not resolve the needs for faculty housing. It helps, but there is a greater need than what we can do here, and that's, there's no concern that we don't really need it. In terms of the access issue, the only thing that's changing about my client's position is the location of the access. There's nothing else that we're trying to change today, other than you're going to come on this new road rather than the old road. But, that's it. That's the only thing we're discussing at this point.
Thank you. Dr. Swan, I said you could have another chance if you want to make a comment, and then I'm going to let the applicant respond. I would just ask that you keep it to new points and brief, but.
So much to react to, I don't even know where to start. I would start maybe by saying, no, the applicant has not reached out to the neighbors. I reached out to the applicant. I called him and gave him the courtesy heads up that I was going to be speaking against the application at the HDC. So he hasn't yet had a conversation with us. We can have a conversation about whether it's a 4-foot fence, a 5-foot fence, or a 6-foot fence, but that's not a meaningful conversation. So, again, keep in mind what you're approving here is going to drive what's going to not happen at the planning board and not happening in site review. This development, and it is a development, looks and feels more like a development from a for-profit developer rather than from an institution that has been here for 250 odd years and is part of the community and will be part of the community for another 250 years. And it's not respectful of the town and the neighborhood. And it's driven by a desire to maximize the number of units. If they would just give up a couple of units and be a little bit more respectful, it would be a better development. I understand the need for housing, but everybody needs more housing. Okay? So, there are private entities that would like housing for their employees too. And there's discussion about creating open space and green space. We're all for that. Sounds great. But typically when you do these kinds of suburban-style duplex buildings, you do that to create a buffer around them. Actually, a pretty good example of that would be off of Hampton Road, Exeter Farms, where the houses are pretty close together, and it was done expressly, and I think at that point relief was given for the number of units so that there would be a buffer around it, okay? This is the exact opposite. They're pushing the buildings out to the margins to create the illusion of space between the buildings, but they're doing it at expense of the abutters. Okay? Just saying. A 6-foot fence is not an adequate screen or an adequate buffer for what is presently a grove of trees that sits right here. Right here is a pretty substantial grove of trees that will be gone, all right? Fine, it's their property, they can take the trees. But it's not up to the neighbors to then have to plant trees to buffer themselves from a, 15-unit development. So once you've made your decision, there's not going to be much meaningful discussion about buffering. Just saying, all right? So just wanted to make that clear. I don't quite understand the hardship. I don't quite understand the suburban-style design. And I just want to make also clear, I want to come back to the whole thing about the access. Remember, my point was about the Court Street development and the pedestrian access through the Court Street development. I didn't say anything about the transfer of ownership of Gilman Lane. So just want to clarify that. All right. Now, if any of you have been around Court Street, I don't know if you can picture it, but there is no path there anymore, as was proposed when it was originally. It's no big deal, but I'm just saying that was the discussion that was had, I don't know, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, and it's just not there anymore. All right? So I expect the same will happen here. And that's not even getting into traffic that gets pushed onto Marlborough Street and the subsequent street over, where during football games, we get to direct traffic and explain to people how they get to the fields for various things and what can be done and what's allowed and what's not allowed. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Couple of quick responses. I think, and maybe I heard it wrong, so if I did, my fault. I thought I heard him say 15 units, it's 13. I'm going from 8 to 13, not 15. In terms of the buffering, I think we've been pretty clear that we're open to whatever buffering makes sense, whether it's a fence, whether it's a landscape buffer, whether it's a combination. If you want to make it a condition that we come up with buffering that's satisfactory to the planning board, that's fine with us. I don't think the intent is to buffer this appropriately, and that's why we created a setback that's bigger than what's required. So the intent here is not to be right up on top of people, and we're happy to take that up with the planning board. The only other piece, the idea that while usually you kind of consolidate these projects together and have open space around them, that's a technique you use when you're trying to exceed the required density, and you say, okay, let me put all this green space around it, and I'll be more dense in the middle. That's not what we have here. We're not exceeding the required density. This is at an allowed density. So we're trying to create, we think, a very attractive, a very livable area with appropriate buffering with the neighborhood. And doing it this way with these duplexes allows us to have the 25-foot buffer and not a 15-foot buffer. Allows us to have more room to work with the planning board to create a buffer between these properties than we would if we had single-family houses. So, I think in terms, obviously, there's a lot going on here, and your role is relatively limited, to the issues we presented, and we appreciate the desire to understand more about what we're doing. But I think in terms of the variance and the special exception, we've covered the requirements, and we'd ask you to vote to approve both of those.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation and comments. I'm going to close the public session and go into deliberation. What I'd like to do is break this up into, we have two requests, of course, the variance and then the special exception for the 3 duplexes. I'd like to take the variance first, discussion and vote, and before we move on to the special exception. So can I entertain discussion on the variance request? Again, this is the variance for a 10-foot setback where 25 is required in the R2 zone.
So, want me to walk us through the variance criteria? Is that how you'd like to frame it?
Well, is there any discussion first, or if you'd like to walk through as part of your discussion, I'm fine with that. Why don't we do, I'm not hearing anything, so please.
Okay. As with the applicant, we take variance criteria 1 and 2 together. The variance is not contrary to the public interest, and the spirit of the ordinance is observed. So this is strictly with reference to the variance to allow less than the required setback on High Street. I believe that the granting of the variance will not be contrary to the public interest, and that it will in fact be consistent not only with the spirit of the ordinance, but with the neighborhood. So I believe we are okay as far as variance criteria 1 and 2 are concerned.
I would agree. I walked down past that tonight. I noted that it really it's about that immediate area is, the other houses are about 10 feet getting closer to almost 0 feet setback.
Zero by the time you get to the bridge.
Get to the bridge. So, that actually is just in line, and I think it really fits with the,
And
with
that's-
the character of that neighborhood.
And that's not 10 feet from the sidewalk, it's 10 feet from the,
From the property line. That's right.
from the sidewalk, not from the street, rather.
Right.
Granting the variance would do substantial justice. The benefits of the applicant should not be outweighed by harm to the general public or to other individuals. I see no harm to the general public in having that new building located that distance from the street. Again, entirely appropriate, given that buildings on both sides and further up and down High Street are, as you get further out High Street, yes, they move further back, but in this general area, it certainly is appropriate for that. So I think we're okay on 3. I don't think there's any question as to substantial justice being done.
I agree.
Looking for nods? Yep, okay, good. 4, the values of surrounding properties are not diminished. We've had no testimony to that effect, and I don't see any issue here as far as property values are concerned. The only place in question would be potentially 25 High Street. I think that's the White House at the corner there. But it itself varies from 9 to 11 feet from the street, so I don't think any diminishment there. I think we're okay on 4. And 5, which I hate talking about since I'd never really fully understood it despite 15 years of sitting in this seat, is that little enforcement of the ordinance would result in unnecessary hardship. I think this calls for some sort of a balance between the applicant and the ordinance, and I don't think that there's any issue here at all. I think that the balance here is actually with the needs of the Historic District. We do keep in mind that the Historic District Commission does have a say over this property, and it is their desire to see it be 10 feet away as well as ours, as well as the applicants. So I think we're fine I've not explained 5 well. Lawyers would throw me out of the room for what I just said, throw me out of your club, but I think we're fine on 5.
Well, and I would say there is law that suggests that, where the other, where all the other properties or nearby properties have a similar condition, there's a hardship there, and I think we fit that. Again, this really, what's proposed fits with the other setbacks, front setbacks in that immediate area of High Street, and certainly on that, the southern side of the road. Again, the purpose of the setbacks in the ordinance is to provide for safety, for some distance from the other properties, and
For consistency.
and it really just doesn't apply here. I mean, this is not an area where you have large yards. It doesn't make sense to have large yards. It's really for the reasons the HDC determined, it's sort of out of context for the area. And, where every other house is right on High Street, and you're not going to have you're not going to play in the front yard there, where you're at the corner of High Street and Portsmouth Avenue, basically.
Right.
I was actually surprised to see that they felt that they thought they needed to have a variance for that, just for the point you were making. It is completely consistent with.
It's against the code, but it's completely consistent with what's there.
Right. And having the zone change in the middle of the works, no doubt has screwed things up, but I think if it had all been in the same R2 zone, it wouldn't have even been an issue.
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion that we approve the application of Phillips Exeter Academy for a variance from Article 4, Section 4.3, Schedule 2, as presented.
Second?
Second.
Okay, we have any comment? Okay, then all in favor?
Right.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, so unanimous for the variance. So now I'd like to switch gears to the special exception. Again, this is a special exception request, not a variance, special exception for the 3 duplexes as presented on the plan. Any immediate discussion, or would we like to go through the criteria as we did for the variance?
Well, so because I'm getting confused about the I guess we don't call it a trifecta, but the 3-unit building.
My understanding is the 3-unit has been determined to be permitted as a multifamily, because it's being primarily in the C2. I don't know, but I don't think it matters.
C1.
Or C1, I'm sorry, C1. But I don't think it matters tonight. We can only vote on what's before us, and we don't have a request. So
Well,
if,
but you were saying that we're looking at the duplex request, and that's not a duplex.
No matter what
duplex-
we do, that triplex, as it's called in the center, based on HDC approval, is permitted in that zone, by Doug's ruling.
Oh, okay, I was.
So the building at 35 is approved can be a 2-family. So that's part of the overall development, but not part of the discussion. There's the trifecta. Now you got me saying it too, Rick. The trifecta in the middle there meets the criteria of the zoning. It's up to HDC whether it gets approved as such as not. It's the new building at the front and the 2 duplexes behind the trifecta that are the 3 2-families.
That's the issue that we're talking about.
only those 2, and the reason
Okay.
Only those.
I want to be clear, though, this board has not, and is not taking a position on, whether the triplex is a permitted use or not.
Right.
I asked the question because I was confused, but, we haven't discussed it, we haven't looked at it, and more importantly, there's been no request.
Right,
So we
they
can
haven't asked
only
for
make a
that.
determination on the request before us.
On the other side of the equation, however, the approval that we grant does go to the overall density of the project. So it's not just these 3 buildings. It's what is the impact of these 3 buildings in addition to the already approved uses of, I get the numbers mixed up, is it 35, the existing building, is that the
Yep,
old,
35.
the old Foster's building, yeah, which was obviously a private home long before that, and the triplex,
In the existing single-family.
and the existing single family, the little gray guy out back there, right?
Okay.
Yeah, and I will say as a general, and I do want to go through the criteria, but as a general comment on my thinking is that, you know, the concerns that we've heard and the concerns that I see are, you know, density and then the buffering, between that and the Marlboro lots. Yeah, with respect to density, it's, you know, it does seem a lot when you look at it, but the fact is, you know, relative to what's there, but the fact is it, you know, it meets the open space requirements and it meets the building requirements. It meets the setback requirements. So, you know, I personally have a hard time finding that it's overly dense when all of those, you know, those coverage requirements, open space requirements are met.
Are you referring primarily to C here? Because I think the thing about,
Both C and R2.
no, I mean, special exception criteria C.
Well, I was.
Compatibility
speaking
with the zoning
general,
district, right.
but-
I mean, it is, again, as in so many places where you don't have a brand-new development, the abutting uses are both multiple family and single family. There's also a school, and there's a small store. I mean, it is a transitional area, there's no doubt about that. But I don't think we can simply say that, oh, there's already plenty of two families or multiple families in the area, so therefore it's okay. That doesn't mean necessarily that we have to continue to extend the number of multiple families.
And all the current multiple families were at one point clearly single families.
Single
and they've
families,
been
by
split.
design.
Yeah,
They
so
were.
duplexes look like two distinct houses with a garage in it. They look like duplexes. They don't look like big old houses that happen to have 4 apartments in them.
With the exception of the new one that's proposed on High Street, which does in fact look like a single family, especially with the HDC influence over the front entrance. Whereas the other two families, as proposed here, look very much like, well, barns from here, but that's subjective. They don't look like single-family homes that have been converted, as every other house along High Street
Well,
certainly
I wouldn't
does.
go that far, because not every other single house, I mean, you know, 47, 49 is pretty clearly a duplex, if you go on the other side of the road there. I mean, there are some, those are not all clear single-family house conversions, so I do want to be.
Yeah, a lot of them certainly were. Which one?
50-50.
Yeah. Which one's 47? Anyway,
Yeah, it doesn't, yeah, aerial doesn't really show it,
no, it doesn't.
but why don't we go through the criteria? Bob, will you lead us through the criteria again?
I'm not sure the applicant wants me to. I'll also note that apparently we've already approved it.
I know.
As one of the other members of the board pointed out, on site plan C 2.0, it says, note 1, the Exeter Zoning Board of Adjustment granted relief for the following items at the December 21 meeting. A little cheeky, don't you think?
I don't think the planning board was gonna be fooled by that, so I don't think that's fine. It's a little in the future.
Apparently, our work's been done for us. So this is a special exception. Special exception A, that the use is permitted as set forth in Article 4.2, Schedule 1. Yes, it is. We're okay there. Number 2, that the use is so designed, located, and proposed to be operated that the public health, safety, welfare, and convenience will be protected. I think some discussion here is warranted. While I dislike the moving of Gilman Lane, because I'm stuck in the past myself personally, I do see the benefit from a safety perspective in having all of the traffic in that area go out through the However, I am concerned about the increase in the density as far as the number of, we're talking about units, we're not talking about cars, we're not talking about people. I'd love to have some sort of a head count here. We are talking families, we're talking kids. There's going to be a lot of people in and out. There's going to be a lot of cars. I don't even know how many parking spaces or how many automobiles are planned for this development. Let's call it a development, for that's what it is. So I am concerned that the public health, safety, and welfare convenience are going to be protected by expanding, to the extent that we're being asked to this evening, the density of the development on this reconfigured parcel of land. So I do frankly have some questions about 2. I don't know whether they rise to the level of saying I'm going to vote against it for that criteria, but I'm articulating my concern.
I appreciate that. And
And I agree with, and that's the scary part, because we can't look into the future, and you're right, the traffic study isn't part of what we get to vote on, which is kind of weird in this case, because from what Bob just said, I mean, I agree, this is a big change for that intersection. It would be nice to know how much of it, from a public safety standpoint.
Right.
That's all, not that it's, right. It's-
And I recognize that the traffic studies are not the purview of the zoning board of adjustment, but we're the ones who's by granting this special exception, we're the ones who are putting the pressure on that area.
I understand, and it is it doubles the use, but it doubles it to 13 units, which is really not, in the grand scheme of, a significant increase in residential use. I mean, it's gonna be more, but this is gonna be a 22-foot road, significantly improved, and is, and it's going to actually go out to the signaled light. I mean, we have to take the leap of faith, but I think it's justified that this will go through planning review to deal with traffic, who is
So are they,
better able, and more so for me, DPW to work through. I mean, I think there's a light there, which makes all the difference in my mind. It is something that can really be regulated to control safety and improved on what's there now.
But once we grant the underlying usage, then all the traffic study can do is a fine grain analysis of what's going on and maybe the timing of the light. I don't think they could say, oh, we've got to back down, you can only have 11 on there or 10 on there.
Well, the planning board can, if a traffic study shows that it's too much or it's unsafe. I don't think that's going to happen based on 13 units. So. and
Why does it
again,
have to?
Multifamily is also permitted in the C1. So, I mean, it's, keeping that in mind as well, that duplex and the triplex could become a multifamily.
Why does it have to dump out at the intersection of High Street and Portsmouth Avenue, of all damn places?
I don't know where else it would go.
No. I mean, I'm speaking overall. I mean, it's a place that backs up pretty severely anyway.
Yeah. I know, I think that's out of the applicant's control. This is
No,
it.
as a matter of fact, it's not. You can leave the conditions on the property alone.
Well, you'd still be backed up past the hospital.
you are now?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that.
You're backed up to me.
13 units of
I think,
academy, of faculty housing, who are and there is a difference there with faculty housing, where you have at least one spouse generally
Walking to work.
walking to work. So, I mean, that is a factor here.
No, I don't know if they're gonna walk to work. You couldn't even get a garage, you couldn't even have the town buy it up there at one time for parking.
I
Why do you
worry-
think they're gonna walk to
Sorry.
work now?
Esther, I'm sorry. Why don't
I
you-
worry about too that right now 35 High Street has 6 units in it. So like, well, we're only adding so many more, but those are 6 probably not large units with maybe one car where they go in the work in the morning and come home at night. Now we're gonna have, okay, mom walks to work at the academy. Dad's home all day with the car. He's going in and out all day, doing stuff with the kids, whatever it is. So yes, you're only putting in 5 more units, but the traffic's gonna be more. They're much bigger units. There's more action happening when you have a family versus you one person living in a house with 6 different units in it. versus a duplex where you have families and kids and activities and all that. Mom's gonna come home from work, oh, it's gotta go to baseball now, cars are going out versus guy came home from work and is parking.
Yeah, no,
So
I
think it's-
I
And I know
understand.
traffic studies are outside our purview, but I think that worries me a lot, because does impact that criteria.
Further discussion on criteria 2, or should we move on to 3? They're numbered here, and they should be numbered.
The other thing about,
I think there's some open questions as far as B is concerned, but I think we've articulated them well. C, or 3, that the proposed use will be compatible with the zone district and adjoining post-72 development where it is to be located. You know, as I think I hinted a little bit earlier, I don't think that the neighborhood is as uniformly multifamily as the applicant has suggested, or even as predominantly multifamily as the applicant has suggested, and this definitely swings it. So is the use compatible with the zoning district? Yes and no.
I agree that I think they overstated it a little. That's part of their job. That said, I think there is a lot of multifamily use along High Street. I think as you look at that aerial, as you go back, away from High Street, there is far less. If you look down Marlborough Street and you look down Gardner Street. With that said, I have trouble with the idea of denial based on incompatible use when you're proposing residential use in a zone that permits duplexes. I mean, yes, by special exception, but it is a residential zone that permits duplexes by special exception. This is not a case where it's a use that's far afield or hazardous or.
No. And I realize that a lot of my objection has to do with the physical appearance, and that's not the use.
So, Ann or Rick,
All
any
right.
comments?
Yeah, I think it's a tough one, but I think it kind of fits more than it doesn't fit, because I think it's consistent with the fact that it's a transitional neighborhood. I mean, that to me was brought pretty clear, and I think there's a lot more multifamily than we were.
Well, and again, my reaction is a lot of the discussions that happened here hasn't been part of our
Purview.
hasn't been what?
Not,
It's not really ZBA business.
Right, if it's allowed by special exception, it's allowed by special exception
right.
at the end of the day.
D, that adequate landscaping and screening are provided as required herein. I think we're potentially being fooled by this particular image that shows all the trees remaining on the outside of the fence line, which is not the case. I believe that the applicant will honor the verbal commitment that was made to discuss and to consider options. But I think we need to perhaps put a condition
Yeah, to me, this
to any
one,
potential approval.
yeah. To me, this one's lacking a little bit for the reasons that, that were raised, but I think with a condition to provide, vegetative buffer, subject to, planning board, planning board satisfaction, something along those lines, I think would meet it for me. That's the difficulty of the timing here is I do think that the applicant would meet and discuss something, but, we can't wait for that. We've got to vote,
Right.
Our vote is tonight. So I think with that condition, though, to make it both clear to the applicant and clear to the planning board that it's a concern and that it needs to be more fully addressed before approval, I'd be comfortable with this, with section 4.
Agreed?
Okay, but we need to specifically say so in our approval.
Agreed.
Yes.
E, that adequate off-street parking and loading are provided. We certainly have no evidence to the contrary. And ingress and egress are so designed as to cause minimum interference with traffic on abutting streets. Taken very narrowly, yes, they certainly are doing that by providing ingress and egress Minimum interference is by putting all of this new traffic out through the signaled entrance rather than the existing, which is incredibly difficult to navigate, and there's no way you can come out of that and take a left 90% of the time unless it's after midnight, I'm sure. This will cause minimum interference with traffic on abutting streets. My concern with regard to traffic has to do with the volume that's going to be coming out onto High Street through that signaled intersection rather than disruption or interference. So I think they meet the specific language of 5. 6, or F in this case, that the use conforms with all applicable regulations governing the district where located. I believe that we're fine with that. We certainly have no evidence to the contrary.
Yeah, I mean, other than the variance that we granted.
Correct.
It meets all.
Regulations.
All
Setbacks
setback, other
and
dimensional
volume
requirements
and, right.
and use.
Yep. Next, G, as a condition of special exception, the applicant may be required to obtain town planner review and/or planning board approval. This is required to be planning board, but I think we can still say that in our any conditions that we would make to a possible approval. And 8, that the use shall not adversely affect abutting or nearby property values. Always a tricky one. We've had no specific testimony that mentioned property values. I think that the property values of the houses that are to be that would be impacted are perhaps best addressed by the landscaping. But other than that, I don't think there's an issue about abutting property values.
No, I agree, and I think this is one of these, I think with a condition on landscaping, I'm comfortable. Again, there's nothing that would prevent the applicant from, duplex or not, from building a home right up to that setback line, and these are at least designed in a way that they're angled, they are farther than the required setbacks, and so, given that, and given a condition that requires additional screening, I think this is met. So, and then obviously the next two
Are not.
Are nil,
Right.
so that's why I stopped there.
Do we need to look at the other requirements that come along?
No.
No?
I'm not sure what you're.
Well, we're putting buildings in, and there's a part of 4 that,
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. There is with specific to,
What am I missing?
no, I'm not following you. I'm getting confused. What are you thinking? Are you thinking about the earlier one, which
The-
was
well,
the
the-
graveyard?
no.
No.
The notes,
Oh, the schedule notes?
yeah,
I don't,
I guess these,
well, which zoning district are we in? We have to look at the regulations for 2, right? Do we need to go through those?
Well, are we confirming that they meet the dimensional regulations?
They do.
I don't think.
I don't think that's it.
okay.
Code enforcement officer is shaking his head like, no, you don't need to go there.
Yeah, and again, they're not, if it's determined relief is needed, they have to be back here. So,
Same with
Right.
parking, same for
Yeah.
height, anything else, and they're not asking for
Okay.
any of that, so we're all set there.
so. Okay. Can I entertain a motion?
Well, why don't we lift off the things we wanted to add on to the straight approval before we make it, and then we won't have to go back and add the ones we left out.
Sure. Well, why don't we discuss them, and then if we make a motion, we can include those in the motion.
That's what I tried to say.
Sorry. Yeah. My understanding, we had discussed a condition to provide vegetative buffer along the eastern property boundary, to the satisfaction of the planning board.
Well, why do we need to be specific? Just say what it says in D. Adequate landscaping and screening are provided.
Well, I think we want to specify so that the planning board knows what the concerns are, and the applicant knows what the concerns are.
Okay.
Because mainly for the abutters.
And in this case, it's the, it's really the Marlboro. I think the biggest concern, mostly because that's where the biggest impact is the Marlboro Street abutters.
Okay.
So,
And the abutters will be notified of the meeting, obviously.
yeah. I mean, and the planning board's gonna review this as well, but I think, I think it's worth putting in a condition so that it is clear that, more than the bare minimum needs to be done and more than a fence. And that's part of our decision, that's part of what got us to any approval, assuming we approve tonight.
Good.
And what about the light? Is there anything we can say?
About the traffic light?
Right.
They presented that it is a signaled light. I don't know what we would do about that. That's really a DPW.
But there's nothing, the light couldn't change anything anyway.
I'm not sure.
If we vote to accept this and all that and put a thing, just saying to look at the light, the intersection,
Traffic study?
yeah, that's nothing gonna come back and say, I'm willing to bet it's not gonna do anything anyway.
I mean, we could say subject to we could condition it on a traffic study, to be reviewed by the planning board. If the planning board wasn't gonna otherwise require it.
I think that if it was a one-way intersection, that's 4 ways we're talking about. It's going from 3 to 4.
I don't know that we can require a traffic study.
Well,
I've never heard of that. Doing that.
Well, I mean, we can ask for evidence, but I'm hesitant, I don't want to step on the planning board's toes. I'm also not entirely convinced that a traffic study's, it is really necessary for this number of units, maybe something smaller. And so I'm hesitant, to put in a requirement and tie the planning board's
Is there any way we
hands.
can get our concerns in there without having it be a condition? So
I mean,
if
that-
something, well, I guess if they read the minutes or watch the meeting, they know we're concerned about the impact on the intersection. Is there any way in the motion we can get that in there so they're aware we're worried, but we don't want to step on their toes and ask for a traffic study?
Yeah, I mean, the difficulty is I'm always hesitant to put in conditions that are the planning board's not gonna know what to do with. I mean, we could say subject to planning board, acceptable review of traffic, but that's part of their review anyway.
Right.
So it's sort of a meaningless condition, and I'm afraid it would confuse things.
And as a quasi-legal board, what we put in there is actually binding.
Right.
So we
I did not understand
It's-
that.
I was
We
trying to
have
figure
to
out
be
the
very
way.
careful with what we put in.
Oh, I know.
Because it's, in fact, binding.
But that's it's from a 3-way intersection that's notorious now, and now you're going to 4.
Right,
And I
well,
suspect
yeah.
they'll
It's
be aware of that too.
it's still 4, but it's the density, which is why I was concerned that our approval, in fact, does go to the density.
Well, now it's backed up to all the way to Water Street and past where I live on days.
Yeah, it's bad, but I don't think that's a factor of this. Maybe this exacerbates it, but I don't know, a few additional units, I'm not sure it's gonna
I'm
make
just
it.
making sure that,
No, and it's not my call, it's
Right.
certainly a worthy discussion, that's my personal opinion.
You
I
can, you can actually make the argument that moving that into a 4-way connection would reduce the jamming, because when people are trying to turn into that road, the intersection gets gridlocked.
Yeah, Gilman, the way it is now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I guess in reality now, 2 houses use Gilman Lane?
Well, yeah, it's a 6-unit, I think, that's using it, and,
No.
Gilman, that use Gilman, yeah.
Yeah,
I
that
mean,
house,
there's very
that house
few
to the
people
right, that house that is not part of this discussion, that's to the right.
and of
The little
course,
gray one out back and the current duplex. So there's 4 families that use it right now.
And security. I mean, frankly, that's who I
Right,
see
but-
using Gilman Lane
Yeah.
is the security.
Right, but it's also not, their new Gilman Lane
Well, what
is
they're saying
gonna
is if you
be,
try to take a left on Gilman Lane now, you back up traffic.
Right.
And the light just keeps
The
going.
new Gilman Lane will be better for everybody, with the possible exception of a fire truck trying to get back in there.
right,
And that's not our purview.
right.
No, and frankly, it's gonna be a 22-foot drive road, so it will probably even be better for a fire truck getting back in there. But again,
Yeah.
that's not really relevant to
To
this
us.
discussion.
Yeah.
So,
Understood.
is there interest, just to keep things moving, in placing a condition relative to traffic?
No.
Okay,
I'm
Fine.
speaking for myself.
yeah.
No, I'm fine, I just don't want somebody coming back and saying you should have done this, or you should have done that, that's my,
Falls under the subdivision regulations. They feel as though the traffic study is required, they'll make it.
okay.
I
And-
mean, that falls under their purview. It's written right in their directions, just like our zoning regulations.
Okay,
And they'll dig into that.
all right, that's fine, I'm just,
It's
I
the
just
use.
don't want,
It's the use, guys, it's the
Okay.
use.
Okay. Any further discussion on potential conditions?
We were gonna mention specifically that the zoning board, that the planning board would look at it, but is that really an issue?
They have to look at it as part
Right.
of their review.
Right. So I think what we've decided is we don't need to add
I think that's
anything.
right. I mean, what I'd recommend is that someone make a motion to approve. We can amend it if we need to add additional conditions if we have more questions about it. So,
Okay. I move that we approve the application. We get something to read. I'm gonna read about cemeteries, right? Application of Phillips Exeter Academy for a, gotta get to the right spot. A special exception to Article 4, Section 4.2, Schedule I, permitted uses, and Article 5.2, to permit the proposed construction of the subject properties located at 35 High Street and 10 Gilman Lane and 8 Gilman Lane in the C1 Central Area Commercial and the R2 Single Family Residential Zoning District.
second?
Second. Do we want to put the vegetation buffer part? That's where I
We're
think
getting
I'm
there,
at.
and we're in deliberation.
So that's, we can put that part in?
We can amend to add the condition.
Okay,
So, we have a second?
yes.
Okay. I'm gonna make a motion to amend the original motion to add a condition to provide a landscape buffer along the eastern property boundary, to the satisfaction of the planning board. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. So we have an amended motion.
We have to vote on it.
We have
Vote on
a-
the amendment first, and then it becomes an
Yeah,
amended motion.
so, can I have a vote on the amendment?
Aye.
All those in favor, aye.
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 Okay, we have an amended motion. Anything further? I'm gonna move to vote on the motion as amended. So, can I have a vote on the motion as amended?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye,
Nay.
Nay.
okay. Okay, well, that's 3-2, so the vote passes. Thank you.
Thank you, folks.
All right.
All right, we are not quite done yet, because we still have to approve the minutes from the November 17th meeting. I wasn't at that meeting, so I'm going to abstain from this vote. Did anyone have any comments on the minutes, though?
Mr. Chair, line, toward the end. The only thing that I found, although I think that Esther has something.
You okay?
Line 303, please.
It's amazing how fast they leave you.
If it had 100 instead of 90 square feet, we would be able to subdivide. That would be frontage feet, not square feet. So the word square should be replaced with frontage on line 303. That's the only one I had. Other than that, it looked good to me.
I got one. I'm so excited I can hardly stand it.
I couldn't
I
find
feel the
it.
same way when I found mine.
Was the spelling of your own name?
Come on, it was something.
I found it.
Line 201. And there's a T missing between the but and the here.
There.
So here should be there.
Yes.
There is a way.
But
out.
here is a way to productivity, but there is a way to product. Well done.
See?
That's a good one.
That's a good one.
T's are a good letter. I like
There's a good
T.
one.
Esther?
Okay, line 216. My name is spelled wrong.
There we go.
How was
and
it
then-
spelled wrong?
It should be O-N, not E-N. I'm a Swede, not a Norwegian.
Oh.
Yeah.
And that happens again on line 219.
Well, at least they're consistent.
All right.
Well, on the first page, she had it right, so she was trying to get me for a loop, because I wouldn't think to look. And then,
Soften you out.
219? Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what about all the other ones
I'm
before
not
this time?
done. They've been fine. She's had a moment, it's okay. Line 322, 323,
Oh, my goodness.
and 331.
Yep.
No, that's
Not a
like,
vital fix, but
Well, it is.
she's so good, I was excited.
I know, it's good, it's almost nice.
rare to find something.
Catch Joanna at something because she gets these so right. It makes it,
You're
What's the
right.
distinction? You're a Swede, not a
Pretty-
Norwegian?
Pretty dry
Got it.
stuff.
all right. Is that all?
That's all I
All right.
have.
Can I have a motion to approve the
Oh.
minutes as amended?
I so move.
Second.
All in favor?
Ah.
All right, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.